work.
Oh.
Where in Florida?
Delray Beach.
Ah, nice.
Very nice. The green owl. What's the owl?
Something, I don't know.
Something like that. The green owl.
Yeah.
They have a lot of pickleball courts down there, Mike?
Every town has tons.
Good.
Morning, noon, and night.
All right.
Are they all decorated for Valentine's Day? They have those illuminated hearts on the lampposts.
I haven't checked the ones in downtown Delray. They're the nicest, and they decorated. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always nice.
Marilyn.
Hi there, how are you?
Good. How are you, Marilyn?
I'm fine, thanks. Haven't had dinner yet, so if you see me sneaking mouthfuls of food, I apologize. I'll try to.
Marilyn, small bites, the secret, small bites.
We saw you, Mark.
But you can also keep turning your screen, your video off, and just come back. But as long as we're listening and talking.
Was the only one missing is John Sasso? Kevin, is that?
I think so. Yep. Ron, John, Mark, John. Yep.
Okay. Just give him one more minute and then we'll begin.
Yeah. I mean, we have a quorum on the Council on Aging as well. So.
Okay, great.
A question on how that works. Are we required to take attendance and have minutes for a council meeting out of this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so the way I see it working, this is John O'Neill, is that I'll open it up for the recalc committee. That's the Reading Center for Active Living. It takes a while to get used to that, even for me. And I'll do attendance for that committee. I'll just do acceptance of the minutes of our previous meeting, and then we can go right out, turn it. Oh, one more thing. I want to just read the charge, because also I understand there may be some people from just the general public who may not be clear on what the charge of our committee is. So I'll read the charge, then I'll turn it over to the Council on Aging to do their attendance, and then we can begin.
And the people who are from the general public, we need to record them on both sets of minutes, do we, as other attendees? Or just on the recalc minutes?
Not necessarily, because you won't have the names of everybody.
Right. I think it's more going to be that we want to make sure we allow some time for them to speak.
Okay.
In case they want.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
If you're going to start, John, I'm going to start recording the meeting for Nancy so she can get a transcript.
We have an echo going around.
And I am going to mute everyone.
Recording in progress.
And if you want to speak, if you could please raise your hand. I'm going to mute everyone. And if you would like to speak, if you could go down to reactions and raise your hand, that would be great, and we'll recognize you. John O'Neill, you're unmuted now. Unmuted now.
Okay. So I'm calling the meeting to order of the Reading Center for Active Living Committee. And the first order of business is attendance. And can we have the attendance by just people Kevin, raising their hand, using the reactions feature, rather than having to unmute one after the other? What do you say?
Sure.
Okay.
Mark says no.
No? Okay.
Roll call.
So why don't you unmute everybody who's from the Center for Active Living? So that we can do the attendance. Okay?
Each of us can unmute ourselves with the space bar.
Wouldn't it just be easier to stay unmuted until all the attendance and all the minutes are accepted? And then mute everybody?
I agree, but I thought somebody said that we couldn't do that. Oh, no, we couldn't do it by just a show of hands, but
Right.
yes.
But if we all stay unmuted for the next 4 or 5 minutes.
We can try as long as we don't get an echo.
We have an echo. Sorry.
I don't hear an echo. Does anybody else?
I hear it when Kevin speaks.
I think it's only you, Marilyn.
No, Kevin.
No, I hear it as well.
Okay.
I'll just won't say anything, Marilyn. How's that?
It's your connection, I think, Kevin. It's when you speak and getting the echo. Do you by any chance have 2 Zoom meetings open? No? 2 microphones? No, whatever. Okay. It must be because you're doing 2 meetings. You're getting an echo and it's everything repeated for both meetings.
Okay, so the attendance, Ron Assini.
Here.
Michael Coltman,
Here.
Mark Doxer,
Here.
John Parsons,
Here.
John Sasso. Not as yet. John O'Neill here. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of our last meeting.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions? Seeing none, all in favor, and we'll have to do a roll call again. Ron Assini?
Yes.
Ron voted yes.
Yes.
Michael Coltman?
Yes.
Mark Doxer?
Yes.
John Parsons?
Yes.
John O'Neill, yes. So
Okay. And
Minutes-
Marilyn, you need to call roll.
Okay.
Call to order first.
Oh, all right. I call the Council on Aging meeting to order at 7:08. And I'll call attendance. Jackie Behenna.
Here.
Thanks. Barbara Carney. I see a Barbara, but you're muted, Barbara.
Wrong Barbara.
Ah, and you're here. Great, thank you. Has Brenda Cashman been officially removed from the Council on Aging yet? Or is that still in the works? We're not removing her.
I believe she has.
Okay, so we don't need to record, but Brenda Cashman, just for the record, not present. Okay. Joan Coco? You're
She's
muted,
muted.
Joan. Joan, you need to unmute.
Okay, mute. Do you hear me now?
Yes, you're here.
Okay.
Thank you. Jolyn Eck? Not here. Karen Fotino?
I never saw her either.
Okay, not here. Is Sally Hoyt still a member? Kevin?
Associate.
Is she's still an associate? Okay, not here. I don't see her anyway. John Parsons,
Here.
Karen Panett,
Here.
Sandy Schaefer,
Here.
Marilyn Shapley, here. Debbie Small,
Here.
Nancy Zimlack,
Here.
and that's it, unless there's been someone new that's joined that I'm not aware of. No, okay. And we do not have any, do we go on to the minute? Did you, we don't have any minutes yet because
No.
it's a special meeting for us. So I think we've done our business for now.
Okay. I'm gonna first read the charge of the Recalc Committee. And that is to explore both current as well as future community needs, initiate planning for a new senior/community center, and with the hiring of a consultant who will work with the town staff and volunteers appointing to the committee to identify community needs, present ideas, and foster stakeholder involvement in the public engagement strategy. And also I want to add is that there's certainly no doubt among the members of the committee, of the recalc committee, that the current facility is inadequate. So, I mean, it's more a matter of what people would like to see, what are the priorities, because obviously you can't get everything that you want, that we're also going to have to engage a broader public, because even though we know the need is there, it's gonna take money at some point. And to do that, we're going to then have to get the support not only of the select board, but of town meeting. And town meeting will be influenced by what they hear from a broader community. So that's part of the reason too. I know some people are questioning the role of the consultant, but that's part of the reason that the consultants will be helping to get a broader base of support for the ideas that we want. Hopefully if people were able to see the minutes of our last recalc committee, where we started talking about some of the things we'd like to see and some of the priorities, and then that obviously led us to say, right, but what does the Council on Aging see as its priorities? You know, and where do they see is the location an important part of it? So that's some of what we would like to be hearing tonight. And then we could, you can ask questions as well. But right now, if people could want to just jump in and say what they would like to, what they like to see, and don't want to see, if that comes up as well.
So John, are you asking for a Council of Aging member to perhaps kick things off here?
Yes.
I can start. I think it might be not the case that everyone has had a chance to see those minutes.
Okay.
They weren't distributed to us, and honestly, no one suggested that we go read the minutes. So that might be a little premature on that. And just to throw in a little bit of my 2 cents in terms of procedure here, given that we haven't had a formal list of this is what you'd like to help, we're all here and happy to help in any way we can. But my preference would be, since we're meeting on the 7th, for the council to have an opportunity to sort of collectively discuss this, because I don't think we've put together any kind of discussed statement of here are our priorities for recalc. Our focus has been more on daily operations of the current existing situation, while we've had a very strong interest. So, I think this could be a great forum to start brainstorming, but I'd like us to have the opportunity to also put our thoughts together as a council as a whole, and perhaps come back and talk to you once again after we've talked it through. But this is a great place to start the discussion. I'm sorry we're not further along, but again, we didn't get that request. So I don't know if the others have all found the minutes and gotten ahead of me, in which case that's great. But I just don't know.
I'm a little confused, Kevin, because I thought that was.
Yeah, I know I sent them out. I think I sent out the link to the meeting. I sent the minutes to the recalc people. I can send them out right now, and I can share the document.
Because that was my understanding that
right
that
now
was going to happen, unfortunately. So
we had the link to the December meeting, and that's the last we'd heard.
Okay. Can people see my screen?
Yep.
So this was the list that the recalc generated our last meeting.
again, it'll take us a few minutes to digest it, but just to throw my 2 cents worth, and I don't wish to be the sole speaker by any means representing the council on this, because we certainly have not had a chance to come up with any kind of collective thoughts, but I don't see explicit mention of having far more accessibility, ease of accessibility in space right now. And again, I know you've already said, we all know the current facility is not adequate, but the whole place has to be wheelchair friendly wherever and whatever it is, I would say. And not just technically accessible, but genuinely wheelchair friendly and walker friendly. And I would say parking goes along with that too. As things stand, I believe there are 2 handicap parking spaces that are truly easily accessible by the Pleasant Street Center. I don't think 2 handicap spaces would begin to accommodate the number of handicap cards that you would find that the 7,000 people in Reading who are over 65 have. It's just, so I just add it to the list.
By the way, that's just the first page of the list.
Okay.
All right.
Well, if those things could be on the list somewhere, that would be.
No, that's what we're looking for, sure.
Yeah, that would warm my heart tremendously. But anyway, let others speak as well. And again, just to reiterate one last time, I'm going to ask that we put reviewing this and collecting our thoughts on it at our February 7th meeting on our agenda, so that we can discuss this as a council as a whole. And we'd like to come back, and assuming we find something that's different or in addition to what you've got, I'd like for us to be able to come back and talk about what our collective thoughts are. But anyway, let someone else talk. And thank you for inviting us, by the way. We're really excited to be able to help with this.
John, I think Mike Coltman has his hand up, John.
Oh, okay.
So one of the reactions that sort of got us to really thinking about this was a comment that we should really just get out of the Pleasant Street Center. And one of the questions that I had was, is a location near downtown Reading an important factor? And that's was one of the things that we were looking for from the council. Was it an impression of whether downtown is a good point? And I mean, along the lines of, you could take the Pleasant Street Center and, add a huge building off to the side of it and put parking underground, elevators, accessibility, all sorts of things, if downtown was a really important piece.
Yes, Nancy?
Yeah, I think that is going to be a good question for the survey, because we don't reach all of the senior clientele in Reading. There are 7,000 plus seniors. I think we can speak, the Pleasant Street Center can speak to maybe about 1,000 people that use the center. But some of the other centers in other communities are not downtown. So I think I, for one, wouldn't be able to say yay or nay or that. I think it's a question that needs to be explored. But definitely the current center, I've done a number of programs there myself, and it is just so inadequate for what is currently being programmed there, as well as, future possibilities. But I mean, it's kind of nice to have it downtown, so people can do errands and go to CVS and browse the bookstore, but I don't know if it's all that important.
What are some of the things that couldn't be presented because the facility is inadequate or couldn't hold sufficient numbers of people?
Hmm.
Okay, Nancy, again?
Yeah, if I may be so bold, I think that's a good question for Amy. She has her hands on the pulse of what's actually happening in the center, and she can generate the numbers for that. So, but whenever large events are held, there always seems to be a wait list for those. Like a holiday event or whatever. I know painting, the art group is humongous now. So
I see two people. Well, Marilyn has her hand up, and then this, Kevin, I don't know the names of all the people. So if you could help me out.
Okay.
Joan goes before me. Let Joan have a chance.
Yeah,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Joan
Yeah.
Coco. Yep.
Yes. I think the problem with it being out of town is the fact that you're going to have to transport an awful lot of people in the bus because of where they live and everything. Because a lot of people live in senior housing. So they'd have to be bused. So I think that's why downtown would work better.
Well, we transport now as it is.
I know.
Mhm.
Well, you can't, your bus doesn't transport that many people anymore.
Well,
But yes, but I mean, you have to transport more if you're expanding, if you think you're going to be bigger, I think.
That'll-
Go ahead. Amy probably has more than I do, but I think you need it in downtown, someplace downtown. They looked into over next to the rifle range and thought that was too far away. That's it. I'll turn my hand down.
Okay.
I mean, probably the biggest limitation of the building is the opportunity to do multiple decent sized events at the same time. We basically have one room to deal with.
Right.
And right now, like art was mentioned, if we had a bigger room, we could double the size of the art class. We could double, bingo's going well.
You could double Zumba.
We could double Zumba. And we could do those things. And, ultimately we want to bring back some type of congregate lunch program, whether it's probably not going to be the same as it was. But right now we have to stop all activities, set up for lunch, break down for lunch in order to do another activity. And that's probably the biggest limitation.
I can just adding, but I agree totally with what Joan's saying about the transportation issue. I did must have been the end of October before I started my new job. I did in a mad dash to try to learn what I could before I knew I was going to be tied up between 9 and 5 every day. I visited a whole bunch of senior centers. I went to Lexington and Woburn and Winchester and Linfield. And
did you go to Andover?
I've been to Andover before, so I didn't this time.
Okay.
So I haven't seen it since they did their enhancements, but I've been there before. And many of them are not in the downtown, but what those towns had was not just the senior van, but some form of bus service that large numbers of people could on a regular, frequent basis jump on and get to those locations.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with Andover. They've got, I think it's the Mystic Valley Regional Transit now. One of their lines actually has the end destination as their senior center, but it also goes to the grocery stores. And, they probably run every half hour, or maybe it's every hour, but it's a level of transportation that a senior center van or even 2 vans can't begin to touch. But if you have that, And I don't know what it takes for a town to get on those lines. Then being further away, I think, is not such an issue because you can get there. So that's that. I'd say another major shortcoming of the current facility is we don't have a kitchen, and I think I saw it on the list, that is truly a full-service kitchen. We can't actually cook meals. And as a result, the quality, I've heard from everyone who's eaten there, is not often spectacular. And there are other senior centers, like at the most exciting one was Linfield. They have their own chef, and he's got a real kitchen. And
Yeah.
people rave about the food, but it's more than just the food. It's getting something. I think you were speaking on, Kevin. It's something that brings people together to socialize.
Yeah.
But you need not only the room, you need the quality of the kitchen and the food to do that.
A couple of the senior centers cater, have their meals catered,
Yeah.
because I know Winchester does.
John,
And
you've
the
got Tom
point of-
Model's hand up in the air.
Okay.
On size, another thing too, again, as Nancy was saying, we currently only have contact with approximately 1,000 of Reading seniors. There are 6,000 who, to my knowledge, have not received any kind of regular newsletter, and we used to do that. But for good reasons, it stopped during the pandemic because it used to require a lot of shoulder-to-shoulder manual putting things together, and it wasn't safe. But it could be outsourced, and we've been exploring other opportunities to get a newsletter out to those people. But in the absence of that, because the time has not been seen as being right yet for it, I don't think we have a clue of what the true volume would be if people were all aware of programming. And it's not just, it's a perk that we'd like to give everyone. There could be 6,000 people out there who have needs. When Jane used to do small ad hoc studies, every single survey she ran listed not knowing about the services available in Reading as an issue. So I just caution you to be too driven by results that come from the 1,000 that we know we're serving, and find a way as soon as you can to get a survey out to all 7,000 people in Reading to start getting a feel what the true need is. Because with that kind of disproportion, if it were only we're missing 1,000 out of 7,000, I wouldn't be so concerned. But it's 6,000 of them out of 7,000, and we really need to find out what do they need. Maybe nothing. Maybe they're in great shape. Who knows? Maybe they'd like to volunteer and help us, but we don't know. And I just speak about this with passion because for the Council on Aging, this is one of our mandates as a council. It's part of why we exist, is to educate the community and to identify needs. So I am seeking out this avenue as one more way to encourage you to take the really broader look early as possible in your research, because you may find it's very different from what you're hearing simply from the people that really do use the center a lot. And you may not, I don't know. It's just a question mark, so.
Okay. And Kevin, you said someone else had their hand up?
Tom Model.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, thanks very much. I had a couple questions. I think a survey would be a good idea to get more detailed information from the people, but like with any survey, you're lucky if you get back 50%, more likely 30, 40%.
Mm-hmm.
And the over 65 population, according to the numbers that I saw recently that Mark, I think, provided me, we're heading towards about 28, 29% of the total population in the town being over the age of 65. Now, in terms of the location of the senior center, it's true that you have to be very concerned about the people that are located in the housing for the older population. But we have a geographic database for the town, and would it not be possible to plot out the actual locations and create a map of where the people over 65 live in town, and you could then find what the issues were relative to transportation, should you want to consider locating it outside of town? And then the second question I had, while the concerns about the older population, of which I'm one, is a real concern, I thought this general recalc effort was to look at all the various services needed across the town in terms of not only the aging population, but the youth and the recreation and so forth. And how much is that being factored into the ongoing discussions right now? Thank you.
Yeah. No, you're totally correct. It's the broader population is the charge. You might not have been on here. I read the charge that we have as a committee. And yes, it's certainly that's why it's called a Center for Active Living, and of which an important component of it would certainly be senior programs, as well as programs for people who are caring for older people as well. That's also come up already in our discussions, because that adds another sizable part of the population. When you look at, families who are involved of all ages within a family structure, caring or, working along with older people.
That's right. That's an extremely important factor. But until you begin to put all those on the table, it's difficult to not focus on one area that might occupy the most intense concern. And
right.
In terms of the costs and the practical opportunities, you have to really look at the overall picture fairly early on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I also want to note, for purposes of the minutes, that John Sasso has joined the meeting, Kevin. So that could be recorded as well. Okay. Are there any other hands up, Kevin, that you can see?
Basically the same. John, Mike Coltman, your hand's still up?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on some of the things that people have said. So we are certainly concerned with the programs for seniors, and specifically the mobility challenged and all of that. But I think it's very important for this center to also deal with all adults in Reading and make sure that that we're providing programs that will encourage a lifestyle and everything else that will enable them to live safely and comfortably in their homes for a long time. And that's not just, when you get to be 70, you need some programs. That's also at 30 and 40. So I think we need to really keep those things in mind.
And so people should know too, Mike's on the Recreation Committee, and we certainly feel that the Recreation Committee should be actively involved in this process, as well as the library, because once again, we are talking about the broader needs of people in the community, and we want to also take as much advantage of the existing resources as well as add to them as possible. And a lot of people, I think has already been mentioned, aren't even aware of what does go on now in the town and what's available. So that has to be addressed as well. Yeah, Mike?
And the one thing I wanted to add is that one of the key things to getting more than 1,000 people involved in this is to get the programs early on in their lives so that they're familiar with what's going on. And when they are in need of a program, can access it correctly and find the resources. People don't know that now.
Okay. Somebody's hand just.
Nancy Zemlak.
Okay.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons, of course, that we're focusing on the older 60 plus population is because that's our focus. But I think I can speak for all council members that we understand that you have a broader perspective. But your points are well taken about participating in events when you're younger. You're more apt to keep going when you're a little bit older, and plus more people know about it. So I think we can all agree on that. But talking about a group that of people that the that the Pleasant Street Center is not serving now in terms of programs and activities tends to be the younger group, the 60, 65 age group, that they're not participating in the activities. So it will be interesting to find out why are they not participating. I know, for example, there is a group that kind of formed and kind of broke off, and they generate their own programming. And what they were looking for was something that wasn't so, lack of a better word, old age related. They wanted more interesting programs offered where they could socialize and talk and educational and learn things. So I think it will be interesting to explore that group. And also, I think we need to make sure that there are evening programs for the senior population, because a lot of those people, we don't know how many, but a number of them are still working. So, what can we, what can we offer that group, and what services do they need? Because they work 9 to 5 and they can't attend any of the current programming. So those my 2 cents.
Okay, great.
And John Sasso has his hand up.
All right.
Thanks, John. Sorry. Hello, everybody. So during our initial conversations, one of the questions I had brought up was trying to understand to what extent the town and the council had done anything to respond to some of the initial recommendations that came out of the report that was done back in 2016, 2017. And the response I got at the moment was that there's been, I guess, quite a bit of turnover that's occurred since that time. And so some of that history has been lost. So if I'm not quoting that correctly, someone can correct me. But so I was just curious if anybody on the council would be able to share. I mean, a number of the issues that we're speaking about here are things that were identified in that report, and certainly it forms the basis of some of the conversations we've had as well. So, but I'm just curious for a few reasons. One, we do have a broader scope, but at the same time, we are also looking to try to focus on, what it might look like, and understanding the types of things that you've tried to do to fill some of those gaps would be really helpful. One of the things that we're going to end up doing in the end is helping to prioritize what things make sense for us, and what sort of space needs and all that stuff will kind of fold into it. But knowing the things that you might have actually tried or have felt have been important to kind of work on would be really helpful.
And if I could just jump in, because the initial report that you're referring to was funded out of my department, and I was here for it at the time. That came out of the public services budget. And we've reported out on those improvements in the annual reports. So it's all documented in subsequent, probably 2017 annual report and the town report. And the basic gist of it is the physical improvements that were made to the reception desk and down in the computer room, and some of the low-hanging fruit that we could afford to do with the help of facilities. Those were where the upgrades were made. And of course, additional staffing was brought on. So the staffing chart that's in that report isn't reflecting what's available today for staff capacity. But those are the key things that, in my memory, have been upgraded.
Any other programmatic things that the folks might be aware of that you talked a lot about some of the programs that you've tried to run, but you've been limited because of the space. You can only do one at a time. You're limited in totals. We actually talked about the ability to potentially leverage other facilities in the community and vice versa. So, for example, having access to some of the gyms in the school, which we know unfortunately have their own set of priorities, but kind of looking at what those back and forth might be, and then obviously having the ability for some of the people in the other ages to come to a center like this to do programs. So I was just curious if there are other programmatic ideas that you've attempted with other beyond the Pleasant Street Center. Have you partnered with any other communities, or have you gone and gotten space in the library for a program or in one of the schools for something? That would be helpful to understand, because again, it helps understand what obviously were your thoughts and priorities about that.
I can talk about that. Yeah, there's been lots of programming, cross programming with the library, with the schools. The Memory Cafe was something that was very popular, and that was done in a variety of settings throughout the community. Beyond the library, certainly one, but several other venues were used to do the Memory Cafe. So I think to the extent that there's existing partnerships, I think those have been explored.
Jean? Joan Coco?
Yes.
Go ahead, Joan.
We also did a lot of trips with other communities, but a lot of that's all gone by the board because of the pandemic.
Yeah,
But we were doing trips with other communities too.
Mm-hmm.
Like what kind of trips?
To go to the museums and go to
Flower show, Topsfield Fair,
thank you, Kevin.
Nutcracker.
Nutcracker.
Yep.
So, and we're already talking about those, hopefully April timeframe,
Again, good.
if things cooperate, but we can only hope.
Yes.
John, you got Tom Model's hand up again.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, it just occurs to me when we're talking about these various things. I've been doing work in the area of aging populations for a while, and one of the topics that's gained a lot of importance is the intergenerational reactions and interplay, which leads to all kinds of things, friendships and partnerships and support relationships and so forth. So as the committee looks at the various aspects of what's going to be targeted and the things, it's important not to think in terms of silos of young people, middle-aged people, old people, and very old people, because that interaction can be extremely, extremely important if it's done the right way. It's complicated, not easy to do, but I just wanted to raise that point.
No, I'd like to, put an emphasis on that, because I think in my experience, working with older populations and people with disabilities over the years, is that there's a stigma to being old. So even if you're 80 years old, you're not going to go to a senior center, because that's for people who are non-productive. There's a lot of negative stereotypes out there. And I think one of the ways that a community center can help break that down is by people seeing that there are common interests that go across also, nothing to do with age, that people like just doing, and when they find that, and I think that's really that alone is kind of an educational enlightenment, and also is a way of, if you were used to going to a place because it holds things that interest you, then as you get old, as you age, it makes no difference. You're still, the attraction should be, what is it that interests me? And if it's there, I'm going to go. I don't have to. It's not a place just for seniors or not just for teenagers, because God forbid that the two should mix. So I'm hopeful that, just like you said, Tom, that this has the potential anyway of bringing more people in the community together. Okay, who else has their hand up? Anybody else have their hand up? Because
Marilyn does again.
Okay.
I'm right on board with what you're saying, John. And another dimension of that, I think, is that if you have it open to a broad spectrum of age groups, I think there's probably an enormous population of people who are being faced with suddenly having to take on more and more responsibility for helping their parents manage their lives, and support groups and informational,
Mhm.
centers of some sort where people could share ideas or, bolster it's a tough job, bolstering each other up, with the broader age group. That's something that they could find support that's good for them, and it also will hopefully make life for their parents better, as best as can be as well. So I think it's a great idea to have the broader community for all sorts of reasons, including that one.
Okay, Nancy?
Yeah, I've heard mixed reviews from the few people that I've talked to. I run the computer help session down at the Pleasant Street Center. So, I don't see a ton of people, but one of the things that I have heard a few times is that there's a concern that if you have a community center, that the older population is going to be pushed to the side and will have less space and less of their own space because, teenagers like to be with teenagers and little kids like to be with little kids, although they all do mix. So I've just heard mixed reactions, and I would just caution that we listen to those people that, might agree with the idea of the community center, but also just want to make sure that they have a place and that they can go to socialize and be comfortable and learn new things.
I've heard it from a few people as well.
Yeah.
Mark?
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, John. I had a chance to get some feedback from a resident that I thought was really helpful in talking about both some things that are missing / waitlisted currently at the senior center, and also some reasons as to why some people go to other centers in particular, which I thought might be kind of helpful to add to the discussion here. So the main not enough space aspect that this person identified was for exercise class, or exercise classes in general, just not enough space, wait lists, limitations, et cetera. And this is pre-pandemic as well as obviously pandemic. There was a discussion of lunches as one of the big draws of Linfield in particular, speakers and groups, gardening, cooking, a psychologist, movies, a variety of other activities like that. There was discussion about large social space and large social meals that I know have always been restricted because we've got the one large room and they sell out. And this person talked about larger spaces and also the possibility of renting spaces or getting larger spaces occasionally at Hillview or other spots like that. Talked about hiring buses, both for field trips and also for transportation to and from the center. And I think that's a pretty good summary of kind of what the things were. Because I kind of said, what's missing? Where is the constraint? And those are the things that popped up. So I just wanted to share that with the group.
Thank you, Mark.
Anybody else's hand is up? Let's see. I'm trying to.
I don't see anybody else.
Maybe it would be helpful for you to walk through that list and share, sort of a Reader's Digest form of the things that you'd already identified. And because I know that's what you were hoping we'd be able to talk about tonight.
So I think in our first meeting, I showed some pictures from other centers of really what could be.
I saw those.
And I mean, real athletic fitness facilities, locker rooms, something besides a concrete floor. again, the ability to do multiple programs at the same time. A place for people to come in and socialize and have a cup of coffee and not be kicked out when the next program was coming in.
So, John, if I might just jump in,
Sure.
one of the things people talk about.
Yeah, muted, Mike.
Mike, you muted.
Sorry. The one thing that people talk about with the Pleasant Street Center is that it's one big room. And I took the liberty of going to the Delray Community Center, which is a very interesting place. But the Pleasant Street Center is not a big room. That's
No.
at best a modest sized room. And I think really a big room is a good idea. And to have facilities for athletics and fitness and Zumba classes and dance classes and all that stuff, you really need some space. I think we need to get away from the idea that there's one big room, because that's a small room.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing they have in Linfield is a giant room, but it's got those dividers that they can pull back so they can subdivide the big room easily into multiple rooms. So a lot of flexibility.
That's a common practice I've seen elsewhere too.
Yeah. I don't see first floor or ground, or I don't know how to word it, because it wouldn't just be our building, but whatever's there. There needs to be a handicapped accessible bathroom facility on every floor. I'd put it that way.
I think that's well understood.
That's kind of a given.
It's not on the list. And every once in a while I hear somebody argue, oh, but we've got an elevator. So I'd put it on the list just so there's no question in anyone's mind.
I think we also talked about, a canopy over parking so that people could get in and out of their cars in inclement weather without getting wet.
I've also seen it on some specs for other places to have a waiting room, because, another family member might well bring their grandmother or mother or father or whoever to the center, but there's, not only is there no waiting room for the people who are going to participate in programs, there's no waiting room right now for the people who bring them there, if they can get someone to do that, a place where someone can sit and read a magazine while the bingo game goes on or something.
Right.
I'm thinking, I'm sorry.
There's something that I saw a little bit of down here, and I'm not sure how common it is or anything else, but where senior members of the community are taking care of the children of their children, and that they then deliver them to some activity someplace, and then have an activity of their own at the same time. But the one place I saw it seemed to work really well and be a great tie-in for a lot of things, but I don't know how well that works.
It's funny, because I was thinking the exact same thing, that I'm not sure how exactly to handle it, but I've seen it, is that the need for some sort of care for the dependents that someone's responsible for, so that they can, just even for a short period of time, engage in an activity. There's a fairly significant need there, and all the more reason there's so few, caregivers are overburdened almost always. And what I've seen happen so often is their health breaks down because they don't get any kind of relief. And so that the best thing that you can do, the best investment you can make is in supporting that caregiver. And to the extent that we can be mindful of somehow trying to build that into, at least the possibility, whatever center that there exists. We also had talked about, some of it's there, as far as not just trips, but cultural activities and things that, for the broad of the community, you can just get discounts. People can go on their own, but you can buy them in blocks. And so that everybody gets advantage. You can even do that for movie tickets. I used to do that, have that done for the agency that I worked for. And you can do it, people talked about going into the museum, but maybe you want to go on there at a different time, but you could get the benefit of the leverage of, purchasing a number of tickets, to an event.
And right now, Recreation does do that. They sell movie tickets at a discounted rate.
Did they ever offer to sell them at the senior center?
No. No.
We can do that. I think, what's the one down at Jordan's? That's closed right now.
Right. The IMAX.
IMAX, yeah.
Just as something of a role model, it's not to have the kids going to another activity necessarily, but I think all the Ys have small daycare facilities in them that they're drop-off centers for children, but they're essentially little short-term daycare. So, an adult wants to go swimming or whatever, an exercise class, but they've got small children in their care. They can leave the kids there and they're in good hands for an hour or so, and it allows the person the flexibility of doing that. Might fit in the model, I don't know.
Okay. There was a gym in Reading that used to provide that as well.
Was there? Yeah, the Y does, the Burbank does, and every other Y I've ever been in does as well.
Okay.
The one.
Nancy? Nancy?
Oh, I was just going to say it was the one that was down by the liquor store and Market Basket.
Yes.
I used to go there. They used to have a daycare center. Of course, the people that are watching the kids are paid by the gym.
Yes.
So you'd have to think about that. That would be a cost. It's a good idea, though.
Yeah. Let me see. Do we have?
Churches do it too. But they get volunteers, I think.
Yeah.
Are there more things on the list? Have you scrolled all the way through?
Yep.
So could you just be clear, because we will put this on our agenda for February 7th. Is your question about shortcomings, maybe it's all of the above, but is it about shortcomings of the current center that we need to remedy? Or is it about opportunities to expand programming that we just want to explore?
Both. Gaps in expansion. Yes.
Both. Okay. And also, just to be clear, I think I am, but just to make sure, there are lots of short-term needs. I mean, I'm guessing that we're probably in a perfect world at least 3 years out from having a new community center. In the interim, we have a lot to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but and maybe there's some progress. Maybe we could rent some space and start doing some things. I don't know. But there are lots of short-term needs, I think, to be met. And I'm assuming that that's pretty much outside of your scope, and we should be focusing on that as the Council on Aging, in addition to trying to support what you're doing long-term.
Now, that's a very interesting question, because we have talked about that from our very first meeting, a parallel process.
Okay.
But but realizing, at least for the senior programming, the primary responsibility rests with the Council on Aging. So we don't want to step on any toes, but we want to be supportive. And I'm hopeful in our in the surveys and what we're trying to do to identify the needs, that some of the short-term things will jump out at people and say, why can't we do that now?
Yeah.
You know, if there's some way of doing it, why wait for 3 years or whatever it's going to be? So
Right.
that's definitely something we're mindful of. You know, there already was one study that did some of these things. And I know it's kind of like, I don't want people to get defensive. I'm talking about staff now more than the council in some ways, but resources, even though some have been added, are not sufficient. So can some additional resources be added, sooner, rather than wait for the facility? And I don't know what the answer to that is, but hopefully we'll help them we would like to be supportive of helping make the case for that.
Thank you. And I think I'm raising the question in the context of, I think the council needs to start, I think the boat has sailed, if I'm not mistaken, on the budget for the next fiscal year. But for the
Yes.
fiscal year after it, I think there are all sorts of things, and we can't have them because we haven't got the money.
Mhm.
But if we're not serving all 7,000 people in the way we need to make the case for getting the money so we can start remedying some of these things. And meantime, it might be a short-term fix. A lot of people have talked about, can't we rent that space the library used to be in? And I don't know if it's money that affects us. I don't know if there's money to do that in next year's budget. I kind of doubt it since I haven't heard about it. But it's that kind of short-term, how can we be helping and to identify it and move the needle on that? And we need to get really focused on it, I think.
Yeah, and with new mental health counselor position being added to make sure that, the center gets to partake of some of the services of that individual on site, hopefully, perhaps. Well, privacy is an issue. That's one of the things we've identified. So maybe the need for privacy is a significant issue that probably needs to be raised higher up in the priorities.
Yeah. But there are simple things. I mean, like even I noticed in almost all the other senior centers, there was a wheelchair parked by the front door in case someone needed it when they came in, or in case there was an emergency. I don't know if we've got one at the Pleasant Street Center, do we?
We do. We don't have any room at the front door.
Yeah.
We do. I've seen it. It gets stored down in the computer room.
Okay, well, at least we've got one. That's good news. Because I was going to say we could at least buy a wheelchair if that's a shortcoming.
Well, so I help volunteer at the elections, and my thing always is there are always some people that really would be well assisted by having a wheelchair or two. There was a gentleman yesterday. There's no way he was going to be able to go, and he said it, and he had someone with him from where he picked up his ballot, and then having to deliver it all the way down the other end.
Yeah.
That physically, because he was on crutches and everything, and to me it was kind of like I said, wheelchair. I mean, it's just kind of like, and I would like to think that we could be advocates for things like that, not just at the center, but for people with limited mobility everywhere in the community.
Yes.
I think Jean and John have their hands raised.
Okay. Jean and then John. Jean?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So when we talk about the budget process, by the time we get to December, January, the guidance has been set. So just for the benefit of the volunteers on this meeting, when the Finance Committee has their financial forum and they start talking broadly about priorities, that's really the time, long before we even start the budget process, for these ideas to come forward, for the voices to be heard on priorities. And Mark, feel free to jump in, because I think you were chair for a couple of times on the Finance Committee. So Mark can talk, well, 3 times. Okay, 3 terms. So Mark can tell you a lot more about the budget process, but I've only been at it for 12 years here in Reading. And for the 12 years that I've been involved, by the time it comes to the Public Services Department, all the decisions have been made as far as what the guidance is from the Finance Committee. And so, for example, my budget this year, I went to the select board and said, I'm going to give you my dream budget of adding this and adding that. And guess what? We can't afford it.
Yeah.
So my budget that will go to the finance committee that the town manager, sadly, I feel bad that it was his unfortunate job. He had to figure out how to make it fit with the guidance that the finance committee gave. And so my budget that will go to the finance committee reflects a 2% increase. So it can't fit into the departmental budget when after the finance committee decides what the guidance is. It just,
How
it
do we
doesn't
get
work.
involved? How do we get involved in that, Jean? And what are the dates? How do we?
I'm going to defer to Mark. He can tell you the whole
Okay.
process.
Because I'm assuming that for the next year, just as you say, it's a done deed. But for the year after, I'm hoping there's still time for us to get in gear and see what we might do to make the case.
Yeah, so could I chime in, John? That'd be all right?
Sure, Mark. And then
So,
we haven't gotten you, John Sasso. We'll get to you.
I have my hand up, but it's not a white hand, so it's harder to see against my background right now. So a bunch of things. Let me make kind of a big suggestion first. We should be thinking both big and small right now. Okay, so for big stuff, and what John O'Neill outlined at the beginning is when we're looking for substantial amounts of funds, we are going to have to convince town meeting that it's the right set of priorities and that they need to allocate those funds, whether it's for a new center or full-time positions or whatever those things are going to be. It does go through the budget process as Jean was outlining in terms of purely town funds, town operating budget funds, or even town capital funds, like for a building. But there are some other things that we can also do. Number one, there are some trusts that the council has access to and control over that have some substantial balances for small stuff, right? It's not millions of dollars, but it's, there's a few $100,000, truthfully, that's there that could be used. And at the last Commissioner of Trust meeting, one of the things that was talked about was, are there some appropriate things that the council might want to kind of take a little bit of a bigger swing at in terms of using some of those funds? Understanding COVID, understanding some of the things that we usually would do that we can't right now, but maybe we want to take a bigger whack at something with some of those funds. Next is I'm going to talk about this ARPA. Everybody know what the ARPA activity is? So the town has some funds that have been given by the federal government as a result of the pandemic, basically. And there's some funds to be used. So the select board is working on those now in terms of priorities and where to use them. And they all have to be spent in the next couple of years. And the town's got access to about $6 or $7 million. And the state has a lot of ARPA money that they have to decide what to do with. And they haven't done it yet. And it's an opportunity for us to lobby them to get some of that money. And a lot of the things that they prefer in those kinds of projects are things that relate to hardships from the pandemic. And I think we could make a hell of an argument that one of those hardships has been all of the social kinds of activities that we've lost. And that there would be an opportunity to get grants from state ARPA funds. How do we do that? We contact our state legislators with some ideas on, we'd like to do this. Can you support it? Can you go and get a piece of money? I'm going to give you an example. When the town was looking to buy the lot down by the town forest, our state delegation was able to get a grant that's going to help with whatever we may want to do with that lot and get access into the town forest through that ARPA funding, if I understand it correctly. So those things need to happen right now. It's not town money, and therefore we don't have to wait for the next budget cycle. It's state money, and I'm sure I'm overstating it, but they're looking for the right projects to give it to. We should be chasing it.
Yeah.
even if we don't win, we'll have organized ourselves better in terms of going after that. And to me, those are really interesting grant funds. And that's why I say think both big and small, because I think we have long-term needs that we Recalc are trying to grasp and understand in terms of what's going on. But we're also really concerned, as a number of you have said, that there's some short-term stuff that would be important to do, great to do. We've been somewhat thwarted because of fear of not having money. And that's always going to be a problem, just to be clear. But I think we should go after some of these funds that are out there and maybe even consider taking some of the trust money and stepping up a little bit bigger than an event and turn it into an ongoing sort of activity, or a more ongoing sort of activity. So thanks.
John Sasso.
Thanks, John. So just a couple quick comments here. So first, I want to be fully disclosed. The reason I got roped into the recalc committee was that I foolishly wrote a letter to the Board of Selectmen. Thanks, Mark. Suggesting that there were some things that we could do to improve, in particular, some of the issues in town. And one of them happened to be the Pleasant Street Center and the support service. So the fact, Marilyn, you brought up the idea about, hey, what about going renting some space or looking things like that? I think those are great ideas. Now, I will say, as John said, we've talked a lot about some of the things that we can do as recalc, but they really are in your purview, and we don't want to. I'll say the same words. We don't want to step on anybody's toes. Having said that, we also represent a voice, and as Mark said, we're going to have to convince town meeting of anything that has to happen from a financial perspective. But I really think, at this point, given where we are, the priorities, you're right. We're not going to see if we all decide, that we need a new building and we're going to have to go build this. I mean, you are looking at 3 some odd years down the road. So I do think there's a critical need to, come up with some other programs and ideas about how to address that. And we as recalc can't make that happen. We're certainly any information that we collect that can support the COA and its challenges there, I think by all means we'll do that. But I would absolutely, defer to Mark and Jean in that process. But definitely, I think there's support out there for you to do that. There's a clear need. And from a financial perspective, if there are other alternatives, or even if it has to go back into the budget process, you're still going to beat us to the punch. So I guess I would just say, reiterate that I think there's a great number of opportunities, having read through the report, that even though it's 4 or 5 years old, still seems to be somewhat applicable. I think there's some ideas that you guys could certainly take hold of, and even if you put those forth to the Board of Selectmen and town staff, there may be other alternatives and ways to accomplish it initially, and then jump in with the budget in the next year. So there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat here. So I'll stop. Again, it's a little bit beyond the purview of recalc in some respects, but I think I just want to say that we are in support of that, and anything that we come up with that could help in that regard, by all means, especially going back and doing the survey work. I think some of that will also give you more emphasis to say, yeah, this really is an important need. And even though it might take us 3 years, we can do X, Y, and Z today and make it better. So thank you.
I also want to add, we have a new town managers coming on board, and that we certainly should try to sit down and have a discussion with him, as soon as he settles in, but you shouldn't let him have too long to settle in.
I've talked to him already. Let's talk to him sooner.
Get his ear. All right.
Town council has recommended that we be very careful about consulting with him until he's officially on board. So
Oh, yes. No, that's what
that's February 14th. So it's only a couple weeks away.
Yeah.
Nancy?
I'm going to change the subject for a minute and talk about the consultant that is being hired. And I'm looking at the scope of work, and it looks like the consultant is, the focus is going to be on developing an outreach plan and conducting a focus group, community survey, and 2 public forums. And then I assume he brings all this information, or she brings all this information together into a final report. Is that is that what the consultant will be charged to do, or am I missing something?
Jean?
Yep, the scope is on the website for anyone who's interested. So it's a community engagement and community outreach That's the focus of the work, and the consultant will be leading that and working with the recalc.
Did anybody respond? Yeah. Can you disclose that? I thought the 24th was the day.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, good. So what's the end product of the consultant's work?
Yeah, so
what will we have?
as the scope says, it's community engagement, and the survey is going to be the main instrument. Beyond that, we're going to have to sit down and work some more details out with the consultant.
Okay. And this is information then that the recalc committee will have to make a case for whatever to go to town meeting? Is that the long-term strategy? Okay.
Yeah, the reason we're doing this is I'm calling it pre-feasibility study work. Some communities will identify a project. You might remember the library did a feasibility study and got a grant, and then they came to town meeting and said, we need X number of dollars, and town meeting was like, what? Where'd that come from? So we're doing the opposite. We're doing community engagement, try and define all the things that were talked about tonight about what do we envision in a new center for active living? What is the vision? We want to capture that from the community. We want to engage the community. We want to have an opportunity to get all of that feedback first and then take it from there.
Sounds good.
I think Mark beat Marilyn.
Okay.
Thanks. Sorry, Marilyn. I just want to kind of amplify what Jean was just saying also. And I think one of the other lessons from, let's call it the library learning activity, was that town meeting does not like to be surprised. They like to hear about things far in advance, comment on it, and kind of work it through, as opposed to it kind of landing boom on the table at a meeting. And what Jean was outlining really does that really nicely. It goes through it in a very logical, analytical way, understanding the needs, showing the needs, looking at some alternatives, doing some things in the short term, and then putting together a plan. And the specific mission for Recalc ideally is that for the next town meeting, which is April, right, which is like around the corner, I know, to be able to at least share some feedback from things that have gone on at meetings. We'll see where we are in terms of feedback on the survey, if that's with us or not by that point, but to talk about the path that how we're pursuing it. And I'd love to see for November town meeting that we could come back with kind of some concrete ideas on what we'd like to do and a request for some money to do the next level of activities. So for example, if we came back and it's like, you got to do a building of X thousand square feet or something like that to all these things, you'd have to do an architectural study and get drawings made and sketches and all sorts of things. And right now we don't have any resources to do that. But that's exactly kind of the process with town meeting that we go through and get some money from them to do that. And then from there, once that's done, then we know it comes back to this, okay, it's going to cost X to do it. And then we come back around to town meeting, and they've had, a bunch of times to hear about it, to think about it, to talk about it. And then that's got much more chance of having broad community support to get this done. And last thing I would just add is I think that one of the things that we're all hoping to do here, I think, is to kind of give the 60 plus community, if you will, kind of an organized and stronger voice in town government, more so than it's kind of had in the past, so that we can kind of do the things that need to get done. Thanks.
Marilyn?
Just one thing to follow up on what you were saying about ARPA funds, Mark. There was an article in the Globe probably at least a month ago. There's some community around here that is getting an entirely new community senior center built with ARPA funds. They, I would think we could make the case so easily. I mean, I don't get to go to the senior center because I'm one of the ones that's excluded because I have a job. So I've literally never set foot in there anymore, but I have in the past, and I've gone at night when we used to meet there for council meetings. But so I don't know. So please correct me if I'm wrong. But my understanding is we don't have things like plexiglass partitions that you see, in larger organizations for people to safely sit and not be breathing the air as easily. There's just so many little social distancing things we don't have in our current place and probably couldn't easily do because of the physical constraints. Again, I would think we could make a strong case for it being a real challenge to operate at normal capacity without a new facility, and we could try to fast track something for funds with that. But that's my 2 cents worth on that. But I was really excited to see ARPA will pay for an entire new senior center. We're not talking small projects because one town managed to pull it off already. The other thing I wanted to do was just to emphasize, we talk about wanting to give the seniors access to, speak up. We want them to have opportunities to speak up. We want them engaged, and that's wonderful. I do just think we need to remember this is a special community. I mean, as you get older, it gets harder and harder to stay engaged, even with your own family, if they're not living in the household with you. It can be really daunting to get, we were talking, whoever mentioned before with the elections, carrying the ballot from one end of the gym to the other, completely out of the question if you've got a mobility issue for a lot of people. And also just awareness and getting back to that, people telling us repeatedly, we really don't know what the town has to offer. I think an important part of capturing information when you get to that stage from the community about senior needs is going to have to be informing them of what options might be available to them. There are people who never in their wildest dreams would think they could contact the town to get one of those devices that, says, help, I've fallen, I can't get up. Wouldn't even occur to them. We've got money, we've got programs, they don't know. So to get that group to come to you and say, oh yeah, we need more of that they need some basic awareness of things that I think we are not meeting the need for right now. And it needs to go to all 7,000 of them. That information's available if you really hunt on the website, but it's not easy to find at all. Pleasantries is on the website. A lot of these people are not computer savvy. A lot of them are, I'm told, don't even have internet access. It's expensive. I mean, we know those Comcast bills, they're huge. And if you try to pare them down by getting rid of this service or that service, they'll say, oh, the one you want to drop is only $5 of it. It's still a $250 bill every month. This is really hard for a lot of people, and it gets harder as they get older. So I think we need a special strategy for reaching out and gathering information from and engaging these people. It may mean also more going out to their sites. I know Reading Woods has got, I think it's 5 buildings that are age restricted to, I think it's 60 and over, it might be 55. They have a community room over there. If information sessions and surveys or focus groups or whatever could be run on site, I bet you'd get a lot of people who'd be willing to wander that far from their condo. If you make them come all the way downtown to the Pleasant Street Center, and I don't know if that's what you've got in mind, but I just want to encourage you to think about going to them to engage them in ways that you probably don't have to do for the younger population. I think you'll get a lot more feedback. And if even only, 30% of them respond on a survey, what's 30% of 7,000? 10%, that's more than we currently have contact with. So it's still good news and it's progress, but I think we need to really make sure that the outreach for those surveys and focus groups and whatever else you have in mind also have a component that is educational about what you might expect. And you could even go broader than just, in Reading, we offer this. You could say there are senior centers in Massachusetts that do these things. Would this make the quality of your life better? And is it something you really need? And I think you'll open up a whole different dialogue from what you get from your standard, tell us which programs you want. And, someone that's looking at it and saying, I couldn't even get there, or I don't know what block it's on, and I don't know how to use Google Map, who knows? or even the ones that really are really savvy. You know, there are issues, health issues, and millions of things, and just exhaustion. You know, I mean, what time of day is it? You know, is it going to be convenient for them? There's a lot of factors I think that play into engaging our seniors that you don't have to consider as much for younger, more vocal ones. And part of the reason councils on aging exist in Massachusetts is to be an advocate for that sector of the population. Because unlike so many others, there's no organized forum. And I often will cite, you know, the school, the people involved with the schools, they're really organized. It's kind of the other end of the spectrum, but there's nothing like that that's local for the senior population. And they're really looking to us to defend them on the Council on Aging. And I'm sure it's part of your mission as well, and what you're taking on here, just by the fact that we're looking at making a better facility. But it can't be your standard survey in the mail and expect really meaningful results, I don't think, or even a standard focus group without really making an effort to engage people. So I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah, I don't want to pit generations against one another, but I know one of the things I've been thinking of more is already, I guess, in my mind, preparing for town meeting, is that you have a large base of taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the tax revenues in the town, you know, what, 2/3 plus, if you talk about fringe benefits, even more of that going to the schools, which I certainly don't begrudge the schools.
Mm-hmm.
But for the people whose children have long since, got out of the schools, but who have stayed in the community, continued paying taxes, maybe they get a little rebate or whatever, but for the most part, they're still paying, paying their taxes. And I think they deserve to get more from the town. And I think, have to couch it nicely and everything else, but that's the bottom line. I think, rather than begrudge people, which I think there's some of that attitude, I think just like in the vote yesterday, there was a lot of older people who came out and voted around the vote issue. Mm-hmm. And yet 90% of the town voted yes. And so I thought that was, it was great that you could see, like I said, there were a lot of older people. And since 90% of the vote was, favorable, there's still people who are willing to commit to schools because they value it for their grandchildren or just in general for the principle of it. Once again, they don't ask for, people aren't asking for much. They just want something that's not, an embarrassment, which I think that's what this Pleasant Street Center is.
The State Council on Aging has all kinds of statistics that show that the population of over 65s or 55s is going straight up. And then they look at the trend in the budget proportion that's going to seniors, and it's not increasing at anywhere near the same rate.
Right.
And this is, so per capita, what that means is that, and this is overall, I don't have Reading's numbers in my head, but overall what's happening is that the per capita expenditure on seniors is going down. And why? Are they becoming less needy? I don't think so.
See, Reading's an unusual circumstance, even around vis-a-vis the other surrounding communities, in that we have a higher percentage of our population that is school age.
Yeah.
I can remember seeing it a few years ago for a relatively similar population at that point in time. Maybe it was like 4 years ago. We had almost 1,000 more children.
Yeah.
In Reading.
But
So,
it's the growth rate.
Yes.
Is that population growing faster than the seniors?
No.
I believe it's the seniors that's growing faster, but that the budget isn't proportionately, right. It's not a dollar for dollar thing, but proportionately, it's hard to imagine that we shouldn't be spending as much money per senior as we used to. I don't know what need has gone away. And as you say, we're not really spending, a lot in terms of what we're delivering in senior center now. So it's just a way of thinking about, are we really serving that sector?
Anybody else?
I think Joan had her. You still have your hand up, Joan?
Yes, I do. I have a quick question. The consultant, is he going to do a survey?
Is he going to
do a survey?
Yes. That's part of the charge.
Is that going to be like mailed out so that it's going to do more than we do?
Mailed out. I don't
You
know
know,
if that's been decided,
it's not-
Gene. How's it?
COA is talking about doing a survey.
Mm-hmm.
So is the consultant also going to do a survey? Is
Oh,
what
no,
I'm-
no. This is the same survey.
So,
The survey is going to be developed by the consultant.
okay. So is he going to have our input? Is he going to
Yes.
have our input?
Yes. Oh, yes,
Yes.
definitely. Yes.
So Marilyn, I should think everything we do is going towards this survey.
I agree. It's a really important thing.
Yeah,
But I would really encourage it again to have some informational aspect where we make people aware of what could be and not just
Yes.
ask them cold.
but Marilyn, we don't
Right.
want
Yeah. Sorry.
Marilyn, we don't want to do a survey and overlap the consultant survey is what I'm trying to ask.
No, I mean, the consultant survey should have an informational aspect.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Because we were mindful of the fact that if you just ask people something open-ended questions about what they'd like to see, you're not going to get much of a response. So that's why we started the process and engaging with the Council on Aging, because the more things you can actually give people as possibilities,
Yeah.
because then they can say, oh, yeah, that sounds good, but how about this? So hopefully it'll stimulate people's thinking and getting them to want to provide input.
Yeah.
So that's the goal anyway, to get as many people stimulated to reply to the survey as possible.
Hmm.
Yeah, Nancy?
Yeah, one of the things that we were going to do, but as Marilyn said, it was decided that it just wasn't the right time. But along the same idea as what Joan is saying, that we don't want to coincide or send out a survey when you've got the consultant. So that makes sense. But what might help is we've got this great one-page flyer that could be sent out, and it actually mentions recalc in it, and we can say something like survey is coming.
Oh.
And there's Maryland's the need for us to deliver information. So that might be kind of a helpful thing for us to do prior to the survey going out. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. And I think maybe having some of those signs too, like at the library,
Mm-hmm.
so people know that it's coming. It's like save the date sort of thing, cards that people send out.
Yeah.
I do notice the 2 cents on it. I know, I'm sorry, Ron, speaking over your hand, dutifully raised, but just real quick. I think there was concern at the time when it was decided it wasn't time that, we would overwhelm the current capacity of the center. And it just needs to be handled well. Everything we want to share is on the website. We're just making the information easy to find and read. And how much demand might come out of it is just something we're going to have to manage. And, if there's not current capacity, we're going to have to tell people that. But it also would help us understand what need we may have to go to the Finance Committee and be making the case for the next budget short term. And I think you'll get much better survey results as a result of people knowing what could be. So that's all.
Okay. And who else? Who had their hand up?
I think Ron.
Ron?
We have a great resource with RCTV. And if you want to talk about educational and informative stuff, you could almost make commercials about these programs and potentials on RCTV. You could have the high school develop these films for you. They're really good at digital video and everything else. And they could produce programs for us and advertise it and bring out the word about what some of the things that the council is talking about. Yes, flyers are great and everything, but talk about the possibilities of some of the facilities that in there. Kevin's PowerPoint presentation
Hmm.
that shows what some of the possibilities are, just to feed the interest a little bit more on the visual aspect and the audio aspect of it as well too.
That really opens up things, because I know other places have developed videos for their local cable stations.
Yep.
And you could trade get some of those as well, like
Yeah.
on general topics like Medicare and, mass health and those things
Yeah.
that.
And you
Sure.
could have it where in the flyer said, turn to the Reading Station RC3, whatever it is, and hear about what Recalc and the Council on Aging are trying to do, and just to give them that informational thing.
Right.
I don't know if
It's a
we've
good
done stuff
idea.
like that in the past.
Oh, Amy's got a hand up.
Who was
Go
it?
ahead, Amy.
Okay, I love Ron's idea, and just to piggyback on that, even we could create a barcode that directs us to the site and has a, more details of what's going to be sent out, or marketing in a way. So great idea.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yep.
Anyone else's hand up, Kevin? I can't.
I think that's it right now.
Okay. Now, if there are other people who are watching, who aren't members of either committee, who want to speak up, can you see them as well?
I can. I think nobody has their hands up right now.
Okay, well, let's invite them if they do. Let's give them a moment to put up their hands, because somebody's taken the time to actually sit in. I want to give them the opportunity to speak if that's what they want.
Seeing none.
Okay. So, any last words from people before we adjourn the respective meetings?
Marilyn?
Just a question. As I said, I'm happy to put this on the agenda for our February 7th meeting to review that document. If you could send the minutes to us, so we'll have it, Kevin, to review.
It's in your email right now.
Oh, it is. All right, great.
Yeah.
If we could just, as a council, sit and have a few minutes to reflect on it and see if anyone has something they'd like to add. And if we could have the opportunity to join you at a subsequent meeting, if we do have additional things to add, and share them with you.
Sure. And did you receive the minutes of earlier?
No.
Okay,
No.
so if you could do that as well, Kevin, our first, we have 2 other meetings, I believe.
Yep, I can send them all.
Okay, because I think that would be good as far as context too.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you.
Yep.
And we certainly, yes, I mean, we have talked about this not being a one-time opportunity.
Yeah.
We really want this to be ongoing, and for you to feel free to reach out to us, with questions, or saying, why did you do that? Or what direction are you thinking about? And certainly the consultant's going to be working directly with you as well.
Just a question, have you been looking at the AARP age-friendly community guidelines?
I have, but not as a committee, no.
Okay, because I know most of the communities around us have joined that program. I don't believe Reading has yet. But it's food for thought as you're thinking about what a good future would look like. I think they've got
Can
really.
you send it to Kevin to disseminate to everybody in our committee?
Sure,
Okay.
it's a website link.
Okay,
I'd be happy to.
sure. Thank you. Anyone else who hasn't spoken or has spoken and wants to get another word
Mark
in?
has his
Kevin,
hand.
this is Mark.
Mark, okay.
Thanks. So, Marilyn, great. It'd be great to find out what towns need to do to qualify for that. I'm sure that's on the website. So we can
It's on the
figure that out.
website, yep.
Yeah. So 2 other things. One is that the Recalc group right now has 1 vacancy on the group. And so if there are people that would like to apply for that, there'll be a volunteer appointment subcommittee meeting I'm going to bring it up at the next select board meeting. And then so sometime after that, there'll be a meeting to interview candidates. I think there are a few folks that have already indicated some interest, but if there are other people here that would like to, it's available to any resident of the town. Second is that I think, Marilyn, your idea in terms of coming back to the group is fine and great, as John O'Neill said. The other thing is, remember, John Parsons is a member of both boards.
Mhm.
Kevin participates in both boards. I participate in both boards. So you've got some direct channels as well. So
Thank you.
easy ways to do it, as well as more formal, obviously when you want as well.
Thank you. And I also want to throw in a pitch. The Council on Aging has some board openings as well. We have associate member openings, and I believe we have an imminent member one. I defer to you, to Kevin, on how getting that issue cleared up is going. But there's a full member position that we anticipate is going to be available. One of our longest term members is looking to step back at this stage. And when she does, there will be that opening. So we have opportunities as well.
Okay, so I'm going to entertain a motion. Well, I'm not sure which is the proper order. Should the council wish to adjourn first and then we'll adjourn, or?
Council first.
Pardon me?
Council first.
Council first, okay.
And we need a motion. John, you love to do that. It's your favorite thing.
Okay, I'm a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Okay, let me call the roll. Jackie Behenna? Is she here?
She probably left.
She was.
I dropped out, I think.
She dropped out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's neither yay or nay then. Barbara Carney?
I don't think she was ever here.
No,
She was.
She is.
Yes.
She's muted.
She's muted and non-videoed. Okay, so 2 NAs.
This is Barbara, but it's not the Barbara you're looking for.
Oh, so Barbara Carney really wasn't here. Okay, we'll correct that. Thank you. Brenda.
Yes.
Joan Coco,
Yes.
and Jolynn is not here tonight. Karen Fatino
Yes.
She wants me to call her back?
and Sally Hoyt is not here. John Parsons,
Yes.
Karen Panett,
Yes.
Sandy Schaefer. You're
I think-
muted, Sandy. We can't hear you.
Yes.
Thank you. Marilyn Shapley, yes. Debbie Small,
She appeared to drop out.
okay. And Nancy Zimlek.
Yes.
All right, then I will adjourn the Council on Aging meeting at 8:43. And thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. John, before we adjourn, can I ask a question?
Sure, certainly, Mark.
Thanks, John. So
No,
I
you
think-
can't, Mark.
One of the things we should think about is, given the input that we kind of built ourselves, plus what we're going to get from the council at their next meeting, how we want to kind of organize that so that it's ready to talk with the consultant in terms of kind of some of the kinds of things that we might, how we're going to do that survey. I think we talked a little bit about the notion of, instead of just asking, hey, what do you want? Is maybe come back with, here are some ideas. And so maybe
Right.
we want to organize that a little bit.
Right, that's what we started to do, I believe, at the last meeting, though, remember?
Yeah, so it's just, it's kind of it's a list and it'll grow.
Yes,
And then kind of what are we thinking about how, and maybe it's just input to the consultant saying, hey, we've got a bunch of ideas. What do you think? How do we best organize these to ask questions? Or maybe that we want to think about that ourselves too.
okay. Do you think that our next meeting on the 9th is sufficient to wait?
So if the Council on Aging is able at their meeting to kind of share in their minutes, kind of what their thinking was, that's great. So then we'll have kind of 2 groups of lists that we can put together at least. And maybe that starts the process.
Yeah, we meet on the Council on Aging meets on the 7th.
All right.
So yes, and that sounds like at least a start to pull it in. I just think we're probably going to need to organize it a bit.
So I think at our next meeting, that should be one of our agenda items, then, to really kind of focus in on that, as well as hopefully we'll have the news as far as the consultant.
Oh, we
Right, Jean?
have that now.
Okay, do you want to?
Yeah, we've signed a contract with UMass.
Okay. You master gerontology, you mean?
Yep.
Okay. And who's the lead?
Caitlin, I can't remember her last name. She was on the report last time.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. Okay,
And I guess for me, I know Mark's got a couple of dates on the calendar for reporting out. And I didn't know if there is any more detail or if you want to talk about it at the next meeting. The select board meeting in March and town meeting in April. How that's going to be handled, and maybe that's something to talk about next time.
right. It seems like it's awfully fast, but needs must. Is there any other business for the recall committee? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. And so
Second.
we'll do the roll call. Ron Assini,
Yes.
Michael Coltman,
Yes.
Mark Docksher,
Yes.
John Parsons,
Yes.
John Sasso,
Yes.
and John O'Neill. Yes. So thank you all. We'll see you on the next meeting on February 9th.
Thanks all.
Good night, everyone.
Stay safe.
Right.
Bye, everyone.
How can I get out of this?
Thank you, Kevin.